the crystal skull.
It has perfectly regular teeth, nasal cavities, eye sockets, the cranium perfectly shaped. It's a marvel.
But its purpose and its origins are obscure.
The true story? It's actually a whodunit worthy of Agatha Christie, and it spans continents.
What is the crystal skull? Why was it made? Does it really hold supernatural powers?
The British Museum's original label identifies it as ancient Mexican. They acquired it in January 1898.
The date coincides with a surge of interest in the civilizations of ancient Mesoamerica, a region stretching from northern Costa Rica to central Mexico.
There was a real appeal, this whole idea in the 19th century of dashing adventurers hacking through jungles in search of lost temples and buried treasure.
Across the region's ancient sites, explorers uncover one thing over and over again: skulls.
We see skulls not only in the carvings, but also on things like masks, for instance. People would take human skulls and fashion them into masks, decorate them, use them for ceremonies and religious festivals even.
And there are more than 1,000 real skulls at sites across Mesoamerica.
In Mexico City, for instance, they found recently a mound made from something like 650 skulls piled together.
Why the obsession with human skulls?
Modern Western society thinks of a skull and it's something scary or spooky. But in ancient Mesoamerica, it was quite the opposite. It was the symbol of regeneration, rebirth, and the continuity of life after death.
So clearly skulls have very important significance for these societies.
But only around a dozen crystal skulls have ever been found. They are now in private collections and museums across the globe. They have become legendary.
A certain narrative of mystery and meaning has been spun around them. You know, that they're cursed, that they have special healing properties.
One is that they're actually a community, and if they're ever reunited, then an arc of power will form between them that will either produce great divine or magical revelation, or actually change the nature of the world.
Any natural gemstone, even diamonds, will trap impurities. And what those impurities do is they can betray the origin of the material.
Magnifying the skull reveals tiny green impurities. Analysis identifies them as iron-rich chlorite.
Where do you find these silicas with iron-rich chlorides? They either come from Europe, they come from Madagascar, or they come from Brazil.
Which is an issue.
None of those are Mexico.
And that is where the skull's label said it comes from. What's going on? The chemistry of this skull isn't the only strange thing about it.
There's a discrepancy in appearance between the crystal skulls and other representations of human skulls from Central American cultures. They realistically reflect the general wonkiness of a real person's bones. For example, the teeth are often uneven, they're of different sizes. But when you look at the crystal skulls, everything is perfect and uniform. The teeth are the same shape, they're utterly regular, and there's no variation in them.
Could the Mesoamericans produce such Hollywood-level orthodontistry?
The dominant group in Mexico at the time was the Mexica people, or what we would call Aztec. And they were superlative craftsmen. They made beautiful things out of pottery, various metals, and stone.
To obtain the kind of smooth finish the skull has, they would polish by hand using a wet slurry of fine-grained rock. This leaves microscopic irregular scratches on the polished surface.
When you look at the rock skulls, you actually see very tiny scratches, but in a very regular fashion.
Hand polishing cannot produce marks like this.
In fact, the fashion can be assigned to a kind of rotary tool, a machine-based rotary tool.
And that is a problem.
A rotating mechanical disc of this kind isn't actually used in Aztec or Maya or other Central American cultures.
So, not Mesoamerican. Who really made this strange skull? And there is evidence directly connecting the crystal skull with Germany. The first confirmed record of the skull comes in 1886, when it is purchased by New York jewelers Tiffany & Co.
In the archives of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., is a long-forgotten letter written 9 months before the skull was sold to Tiffany's. It's written by an amateur American Mesoamericanist, and it mentions a crystal skull. It's almost certainly the one that Tiffany's bought, because he identifies the man that sold it to them, and he warns that it had been bought in Germany.
The crystal skull is very likely German. So how does it end up identified as a Mesoamerican relic? Is it a misunderstanding or fraud? Information about the skull before its sale in 1886 is sketchy at best.
There is no paper trail.
There's no documentation leading back to an archaeological dig.
We do know that Tiffany & Co. purchased the skull from a French antiques dealer called Eugène Bobin. In the world of Mesoamerican antiquities, Bobin is a big deal.
He has long been established as the foremost French expert in ancient Mexican antiquities. But he had retired to France to devote his life to making money out of dealing antiques.
Records confirm that he runs a lucrative trade in Mesoamerican artifacts.
In one auction, Bobin makes over $10,000 in sales of these objects. In today's money, if we take that $10,000 he made, that'd be over $300,000.
The sale of the crystal skull alone makes Bobin the equivalent of over $30,000.
But making money's not a crime. We know Bobin is a Mesoamerican expert, but he's also a businessman. And what we really don't quite understand is whether he knew he actually was peddling fakes.
Is Bobin being scammed, or is he the scammer? The Smithsonian letter directly ties the skull and Bobin to Germany. And so does something else: geography.
From 1869, Bobin is living back in France, and Idar-Oberstein is just 40 miles from the French border.
Which is suspiciously convenient. And Bobin later suggests he knows all about the fraud.
In 1900, just 8 years before he died, Bobin is quoted in a newspaper saying that a number of rock crystal carved skulls had been palmed off to the leading museums of the day as authentically pre-Columbian. Is this an admission of guilt, being culpable in the fraudulent sale of faked artifacts? You can make up your own mind about that.